I told myself it didn't count if it happened in Vegas. I told myself that the desert could absorb a secret the way it drinks a storm. Fast, hot, leaving barely a mark by morning. That's the story everyone sells you when they text, "Let's do a girls' weekend," and send a screenshot of cheap flights and a hotel with a pool shaped like a keyhole. You don't go to Clark County to be virtuous. You go to take pictures at golden hour and pretend your life can be louder without consequences. I'm the one who turned that pretend into something so ugly I can't say the city's name without tasting metal. We went because my friend Steph got dumped. She's 27 and dramatic in the way you can be when you look good under neon, and she announced in our group chat that the only cure for humiliation is a new skyline. She had points for a room at a resort with an infinity pool and a DJ whose name is 3 consonants and a lightning bolt. I sent the flight link to Ethan, my boyfriend of 4 years, the kind of person who fixes wobbly bar stools without being asked. And he replied, "Have fun, send pics, don't let Steph convince you to get a tattoo." He put 2 little eye emojis after that, which is his way of teasing without sounding controlling. I kissed him in the kitchen and told him I'd be back Sunday. He said, "Bring me one of those dumb souvenir decks of cards." He is gentle like that. I took his gentleness and went to the airport like a person trying to outrun the shape of it. The first night was easy. We checked in, traded our jeans for dresses, and went down to the casino floor because even walking through it feels like counting money you don't have. Everything is air-conditioned and loud. There's a bakery open at midnight selling croissants as if time is optional. We stood in front of a wall of slot machines, ordered tequila sodas, and said, "Cheers to bad decisions," like a line from a show we were all playing in. I posted a boomerang of the glasses clinking and tagged the location because that's what you do now. Put your footprints on the internet first, so the night can follow them. Steph's cousin knows a promoter, who knows a manager, who can put your name on a list if you send him a selfie and promise to get there before 11:30. That's how we ended up in a booth near the dance floor with a bottle of vodka that tasted like electricity and men who took turns making eye contact like it was sport. I don't know their names. That's the worst part to admit, besides the rest. I know one had a jaw that could open mail and a watch too heavy for his wrist. The other wore a black t-shirt that looked expensive and bought shots with a tap of his phone like rich people do when they want everyone to notice they're not thinking about it. They were charming in the way men are when they're on vacation from whatever they are at home. They said they were in town for a conference. They said it like a question, like they were daring us to ask which one. I didn't. I wasn't interviewing them. I was drinking with them, and later I was dancing with them, and later than that I was being one of those girls I judge when I'm sober, pressed between 2 strangers with my friends cheering from a safe distance because they like a show and I like being one when there's enough bass. There's a point every night where the room becomes an aquarium. People move past you like fish you can't touch, and the music is just the water you breathe. I reached that point somewhere between another shot and a little plastic cup of something neon, and after that my memory is not a chronology so much as a slideshow. Laughter, bright and stupid. A hand on the small of my back that didn't belong to anyone I love. An elevator mirror. A hallway with carpet that felt too springy under my heels. A door number I didn't register. A white duvet, a light switch I kept turning off because I couldn't stand the way I looked. I know because I've been told that there were 2 of them. I know because physics exists that the night had an order, a key card, a chain sliding across, a laugh that wasn't mine. I know I said I'm fine. That's the sentence women deploy when the part of you that knows better has been outvoted by the part that wants to be a story later. I was not drugged. I was drunk. That's the distinction my brain keeps asking for like a child who wants to know whether you did it on purpose. Yes. Not sober on purpose. Not rational on purpose. Not faithful on purpose. I woke up with my mouth tasting like old sugar and hotel AC blasting at a temperature nobody who pays their own electric bill would choose. One of the men was snoring. The other was in the bathroom humming. My dress was on a chair like a discarded skin. My heart was a hammer. Shame isn't a wave, it's a light you can't shut off. I gathered myself the way you pick up a broken glass. Quickly, careful not to bleed where people will see. I left while they were still half asleep, a coward in borrowed slippers because I couldn't find my heels, and I wasn't going to stay to search. The hallway was bright. I felt like a thief. I told no one at breakfast. Steph was crying into her eggs because she'd texted her ex at 3 a.m. And he'd replied with a thumbs up, which might be the meanest emoji. I nodded and hummed and said, He doesn't deserve you, and drank water, like my life depended on it. It did. We lay by the pool, and I let the sun bake the guilt to a crisp and pretended that meant it would chip off. It didn't. I went upstairs at 5 to shower. I sat on the edge of the tub and edited my own face in the mirror, looking for the version of me that could go home and say nothing. What I didn't know was that while I was arranging my lie, a series of very boring, very real things were already piling up into a truth I couldn't outrun. First, my bank app pushed a fraud alert to Ethan at 2:23 a.m. because a $600 charge hit our joint credit card for Horizon LV Tower. Room serve. We don't order room service. We're the eat at the diner on the way home, tip extra for the waitress people. He assumed it was a resort, clicked approve, and went back to sleep. Second, my Snapchat location, which I swear I turned off, turned itself back on after an update because you have to redisable things sometimes or the world will put you on a map without your consent. Steph tagged me in a story at midnight. My little Bitmoji hung out on the wrong floor of the wrong tower until 4 a.m., like a breadcrumb trail for a person who never wanted to follow me at all. Third, when I got blackout, I took a video. 4 seconds. Blurry, loud, stupid, my own voice saying, "I can't believe I'm doing this," and then nothing. It's saved to my camera roll and backed up to the cloud because the cloud doesn't care who you are. Ethan opened our shared photo account Sunday morning to find an automated album called Las Vegas Weekend. He tapped. He saw 4 seconds he will never unsee. He didn't call and scream. He called my mother. I found out in the taxi from the airport. We're doing early dinner at my parents'. Mom made pot roast. I texted because I wanted to walk into normal like I was still it. He didn't reply. I walked into my parents' house, and my father wouldn't look at me. My mother was standing at the sink with the water running, and her hands not moving. Ethan was at the table. He looked like someone had drawn him and forgot to color him in. "Sit down," he said. "He said." My mother turned off the faucet and sat across from me as if she needed a barrier. Ethan didn't dramatize anything. He's never been a man for speeches. He laid out a series of facts in a quiet voice. The charge. The map. The video. He said the hotel wouldn't give him footage, and he knew that. He only asked to feel like he'd done something other than shake. He said he wasn't going to call those men, because this was not about them. He said a sentence that sounded like a verdict. "I don't know you when you're the person who did that." I opened my mouth and all that came out was, "I'm sorry," and then it was a mistake, and then I don't remember everything, which is true and feels like a lie because it sounds like an excuse. My father said, "Did they hurt you?" in a voice that belongs to a man who would burn down the world if the answer is yes. I said no. I said I was drunk and terrible. My mother made a sound I have only heard when she thought she'd lost me in a department store when I was 5. Ethan said he hadn't known whether to call the police, and he didn't, because he understands that being drunk and consenting badly is still consenting, and that if I had been harmed, I would need a different kind of help than a family table interrogation. He said he had called a therapist. He said he'd booked 2 sessions for me and 1 for us, and if I went to mine, maybe he'd go to ours. Then he said he had told my parents because we are entangled financially in a way I've always treated like a gift, and he now had to treat like a contract. My rent is on a lease co-signed by my father. My car insurance is under a family plan my mother manages because her credit score is a queen in a way mine is not. They have been helping me until I'm fully settled, which has become a phrase that stretched 4 years into forever. My father said, "We're done." He said it without cruelty. "We love you, but we're not paying for this version of your life." He had already called the leasing office to ask what withdrawing a cosigner would do. The woman had explained she couldn't yank him off a current lease, but he didn't have to renew, and that if my income didn't cover it, I'd need a new guarantor or a cheaper place. He had already called the insurance to split my line and warned me my premium would jump when the family discount disappeared. My mother said she would not send me money for emergencies that look like clubs and hotel receipts. She said she was ashamed, and then she cried like someone who hates that word even when it fits. Ethan said nothing while they cut me off. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like a man who had finally put down a bag he shouldn't have been carrying and didn't know what to do with his hands now they were empty. I wish I could tell you I fought for myself with righteousness. I sat there and nodded and said, "I understand and I deserve this." And then on the way home I asked Ethan if he would stay, just for a night, the way you ask a paramedic not to leave even after you've been stitched up. He said he was going to his brother's. He said he would text me with a time to get my things from our place because he'd be staying there and I would not. You can't be my home and make choices that burn it down, he said, and it's the kind of sentence that sounds like a line until you watch a man carry his half of a kitchen table to a truck and leave you eating on a box. The 2 days after that looked like a time lapse I'm ashamed to narrate. I called the hotel. They said they don't release guest information or room logs without law enforcement requests, and even then there are privacy limits. They said if I had an incident to report they could escalate to security, but otherwise there was nothing. I googled if casinos keep video. They do. There's a reason they call it the eye in the sky, and whether I could get it. No, not without a subpoena, and I didn't want the kind of court case that requires one. I looked up whether cheating is illegal in Nevada in a moment of magical thinking. It isn't, and Nevada is no fault for divorce. Adultery doesn't give you leverage in court unless you blew community money on your affair. If you're doing mental math about what you spent, you've already lost more than dollars. I know that reads clinical. That's what shame does when it puts on a lab coat. I wanted rules because rules make it feel like fate, not character. There are rules. They don't save you from who you are when you decide the night is separate from your life. My mother texted me a list of phone numbers, a counselor she knows through church who works with people who betray themselves and others, a debt consultant, the leasing office. She wrote, "This is not conditional on your choices. It is all I can offer without losing myself." I was angry at the phrasing because it sounded like something Ethan would say, and then angry because my anger is a way to avoid feeling the thing underneath. I called the counselor. She said I needed to stop saying, "It just happened." She said it like someone reminding you to drink water. "You made 20 decisions on your way to that door," she said. "You can make 20 in the other direction now." I made 3. Delete the men's numbers whose names I never learned. Move my things to Steph's couch. Tell the truth when people asked where Ethan was instead of inventing a sentence about him, traveling for work. People will tell you they don't judge. They do. Sometimes in kindness. "Are you okay?" Sometimes in curiosity that pretends. "What happened?" Sometimes in hard truth, like when my aunt, who survived 2 marriages and holds grudges like heirlooms, said, "Whatever they did to you in that room, you did to yourself before you knocked." She also sent me $200 on Venmo with a knife emoji in the memo, like a joke I didn't deserve. Ethan blocked me for a week. Then, he unblocked me just long enough to send logistics. We had a joint storage unit. He'd paid the next 3 months so I could move my things in without a fight. He'd canceled me as an authorized user on the card. He'd separated the phone plan. I'd need to pick up my own line by the 15th. He'd left the dumb souvenir deck of cards I'd bought him on the kitchen counter. The box has a pin-up girl from the 1950s on it. She's smiling like bad ideas are a brand. I stared at it for 15 minutes and then put it in a drawer. I don't know why. My parents didn't change their minds. My mother came to the apartment and packed a box of my childhood things that somehow still lived in my closet and took them back to her house, as if the timeline of me needed to be protected from the current scene. My father texted me a photo of my car insurance policy split and the new premium. "You can do this," he wrote, which is both support and command. I applied for 2 part-time jobs to go with the full-time when I no longer trusted myself not to blow up. I stopped drinking. Not forever, not as a grand pronouncement. Just now because my hands shake enough at night without help. The promoter messaged Steph asking where to leave our names next time. She said, "Lose this number." It was the most loyal thing anyone did for me that week. She also told me to get tested, and I did, sitting in a clinic with a brave face while a nurse asked me questions in a voice softer than I deserved. Results clean. That's not redemption. That's luck. The worst conversation came 2 Fridays later when Ethan agreed to meet me at a coffee shop to exchange mail. He looked thinner. Not in a way that made me feel flattered, because heartbreak is appetite suppressant. In a way that made me hate what I'd done all over again. We sat at a table by the window like strangers on a first date with nothing to say. He asked how therapy was. I said I'm trying not to make the sessions into performances. He said that sounded like progress. I asked if he was seeing anyone else. He said no, the idea felt like inviting a guest to a house he was still rebuilding. I asked if there was any chance. Then stopped. He said, "Don't ask me to do that to myself yet." He slid a manila envelope across the table. I printed the cloud stuff. I flinched. He shook his head. "Not to punish you. For your counselor. So you can stop squinting at the night." It happened. He stood. He threw his cup away. He said, take care. When a person like him says that, it isn't a pleasantry. It is a boundary and a blessing. Sometimes I wonder about the men in the room. Whether they went home to someone who asks how the conference went. Whether they tell stories about the girls in Vegas the way people tell stories about weather. Wild here and gone. Whether they watched me leave and forgot me before the door shut. It doesn't matter. People want villains they can name. Mine lives in my mirror. If you're reading this because you want proof it can happen to anyone, I'm the wrong girl. It happened to me because I chose it. Because there's a version of me that likes the cliff more than the view, and I fed her with neon and lies and the idea that the city will keep my secrets if I tip well. If you're reading this because you want to know whether he took me back, not yet, maybe never. He is a man who chooses himself without cruelty. That is not a threat. It is what I loved about him before I learned how it feels when he turns that kindness away from me. I pay my own rent now in a place that smells like someone else's cooking through the wall. I cancel the subscription boxes that made me feel like a person who has her life together, when really, I just had nice moisturizer. I go to therapy and do the boring things that make you less likely to be the most dangerous person in your own life. Sleep, water, telling the truth when a small lie would be easier. My parents text me recipes and nothing else. Proud of you will have to be earned. That's fair. People keep telling me I should forgive myself. I will, maybe in increments. When I pass a slot machine at an airport and don't flinch. When I can say Vegas without the taste. When I can think about Ethan saying take care and believe that's a wish for me to be a person he could nod at across a room, not a woman he is to keep small in his mind to avoid the mess of loving me again. Self-forgiveness is a long hallway. I'm walking. If there's any useful piece of realism in this mess, it's this. There isn't a jurisdiction in America where you can drink your way out of responsibility, and Nevada isn't a loophole for your conscience. Hotels don't hand you tapes just because you're crying. Casinos do remember you, just not for the reasons you hope. And if the person who loves you most has to learn about your night from an automated album and a fraud alert, the law will be the least of what you lose. I don't have a moral that fixes anything. I have a list on my phone titled things I don't do anymore. It starts with, don't drink when you're sad. Don't turn pain into spectacle. Don't pretend a city can absolve you. It ends with, tell Ethan the stupid small truths before they turn into 4-second videos the cloud will not let him forget. I'm trying to be a person worthy of the next deck of souvenir cards, if there ever is one. Not because of Vegas. Because I want a life where I don't need the desert to swallow anything for me.